Hi there. I'm Ellie Rivers and I am an ecom consultant, and I'm joining you on the Domestika platform to talk about creating a content marketing strategy for your ecom brand. I'm going to start by doing a bit of intro into who I am and what I've been doing, and then I'll go into a little bit of information about content marketing and what it is, how it can help your brand, what you should be focusing on, a few tips and techniques on how to achieve this. And then I'm going to implement all the tips that I've put into play into a brand profile and creating a content strategy for the brand. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm really sort of happy to be part of the kind of Domestika family and to be on this amazing creative platform, which is just profiling great individuals. So it's a real honor to be here, and I hope that I can share some insights with you on how to achieve a great content strategy moving forward. So first things first, a little bit about me. I started life as a sort of wannabe fashion designer back in the day and did a degree in women's wear fashion design, but quite quickly kind of got drawn into the world of journalism and publishing, which I always loved, and actually is no coincidence that I've got my favorite publication on the wall. And I went to New York as part of my kind of internship with my university at the time, and did a placement with a New York fashion magazine called Nylon, which was incredible. And I learned so much there about the world of publishing. And it was just at the time where online was becoming much more kind of prevalent in today's society, and that brands were really kind of focusing on it a lot more. So I was heavily involved in the online side of the business, which was great. And then I came back from this particular placement having shown the editor of the magazine at the time a t-shirt that I designed with line drawings of shoes on it that I'd done. And it was something at the time which was big. Shoes were big. Carrie Bradshaw had a place in all our hearts. And so there was a bit of a shoe mad kind of phase of life. And he said, yeah, I mean, great, love the design. Send one to me when you get home. Didn't think much of it. Went home, made these t-shirts, printed a few up, sent them away to him, and then didn't think that they would get much sort of traction. And one day there I was in my day job in a sort of estate agents in Oxford. And I looked in my emails and there were 650 emails, all with t-shirts as part of the kind of subject line. So wholesale inquiries, press inquiries, stockist inquiries. And I thought, this is a bit odd. I've only got one t-shirt and it's in New York with this editor. Anyway, I emailed him quickly and said, any update on what happened with that t-shirt? And he said, oh yeah, I photographed it and put it in our newsletter and sent it to 250,000 people worldwide. So I was then thinking, right, better speed up this whole process of getting my brand together, which was a real learning curve. And within 6 weeks, I'd got a website designed and built. I'd done my branding, did a mini photo shoot with a very obliging friend in a park, I remember. And my brand was born. And I had this amazing demand for something that didn't exist, which is a really great sort of position to be in. And what I learned from that was how you can sell to a global audience, and you can do it from your student digs, basically. So for me, that was my first kind of little insight into the world of e-commerce, and it did really well. Carrie Bradshaw seemed to really serve me well. So we sold t-shirts all over the world. I did a few kind of collaborative things with other brands, and I met some great friends who I'm still friends with now, in fact, through this. One of them in Australia was a press contact at the time, and now is a great friend. So it was amazing for me, and it was an amazing opportunity to understand really the power of online. And as I say, this was back in the day, so it's 2004, when it wasn't so easy to set up a website, and it wasn't so easy to sort of just kind of create these things. But at the same time, it really gave me this hunger for it, which I thought, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to focus on. So with a kind of new thirst for it. Post university, I went into I worked at a big a big retailer, doing kind of quite a small sort of internship trend-based thing within that kind of department. But I was also doing a journalism course on the side, so that gave me my kind of confidence in my writing ability at the London School of Fashion, and that was a great experience in itself. And then I actually got my first proper job, having had many internships and worked all over the place, at a British handbag designer, which will stay with me as one of my all-time favorite brands. And it was the most amazing experience. Again, it was back in the day where online wasn't a thing necessarily, it was a sort of side thing. So as a result, I was writing the blog and running the social and doing window displays and creating lookbooks and running the website and doing a bit of customer services. It was basically like, roll up your sleeves and get involved. And that's exactly what I did. And it was an amazing opportunity to understand, again, within a sort of bigger size business than my one-man t-shirt band, but it was still an opportunity to really kind of get to grips with how small companies work and how multitasking and managing to kind of manage a range of skills within my role is something that I really loved to do. So that was a real experience for me, and that was 2 years of real sort of nice introduction into the industry and the world of fashion, and understanding how things work in the sort of outside of the university environment. And then from that, I went to a big multi-brand department store and worked within a PR marketing team there. So I'd gone from being, you know, in a smaller team to an enormous team where everyone has really quite segmented roles, and it was quite a different experience for me, but again, an invaluable learning one where you understand as a bigger system what's kind of involved in that side of things. So that was a real, a real learning curve again. And I think the thing is with fashion in particular, it's just such hard work to get into the swing of things. And so the hours that you put in for the glamour of the fashion side of it are definitely worth it, but at times it's a little testing. And from there, I went on to work for a number of small brands. And I actually went back to the handbag designer. I went back to Lula Guinness and worked for her for another 8 years. I don't really know how those 8 years went so quickly, but what was really exciting from an e-commerce perspective is suddenly there was a much more significant role put on that side of things. So where it was just a one-woman band, it was now a team, and there was customer services support, and there was outsourced marketing agencies to work alongside. And it was suddenly a lot more serious and grown up, but a lot more exciting in terms of actual revenue generated through the e-com channels and international sites being built. And, everything was taken a lot more seriously. So those 8 years seemed to just totally swim by in a flash, and it was a really exciting prospect to kind of build the team, to understand how to do so from a small operation up to a multi-million-pound business, and to do that with the support of senior management. Whereas historically, it's been difficult with e-com, because whereas with finance, you've got a finance director that's been in it forever, and people have just kind of always been there and understood it. E-com is a relatively new kind of concept for people. So it was great to be part of that. And following that, I had a baby, and that shifted my perspective on things a little bit. And it made me think about what my career progression was going to be long term. And as a result, I really thought about how I could set my skills to help similar businesses, but to do it in an environment which could potentially be flexible, could be more on my terms, so I don't have to ask anyone if I want to go and see my little star in a nativity play, or whatever that it may be. So I found myself at an e-com startup, e-com agency, and it was, again, a super small team. And we worked with some really, exciting brands across beauty, fashion, flowers. We did an amazing flower, brand that we were marketing and helping with the e-com. And I think that's where I really found my niche. So I'd arrive every morning to a different brand with my, my office on my back like a snail, and go, right, what can I help you with today? And, it teaches you to be creative, flexible, super efficient with your time. No more chatting at the tea station or whatever it is. You have to just get on with it. So that was probably hard for me because I'm a bit of a chatter. But at the same time, it was an amazing kind of insight again into how to kind of speed up and help and advise, and to be really strategic about how you're looking in at businesses and how you can help them. And whilst there's a certain amount of similarities between brands, everyone has their pinch points, everyone has their difficulties, which they have to obviously work through. So it was really, really great to be part of that and feel like I was kind of making a difference. So that was a couple of years of really great experience, and, again, learning a whole new skill set. And as I said, it was a sort of e-com consultancy role. So it would incorporate everything from overall strategy to implementing digital marketing, to advising on team structure, to working through, a number of different issues that are encountered on everyday life for brands. And so that was really great. And then I had another baby. And I decided that not only that, but we moved out of London. And so I wanted to do something that was, again, flexible for me on my own. So with 2 babies in tow, we moved out to sort of Oxfordshire countryside, away from London. And I started working with a number of brands by myself. And I have been so lucky. I've got the most wonderful, amazing brands that I help and advise. And, it's been incredible. And I was lucky enough to find one of my brands who happens to be quite close to me geographically. And so that hasn't meant that there's been days up on trains and all that sort of thing as well, which has been really helpful. So it's a constant juggle between your professional life and your personal life, and making sure that there's a balance and you get your children to see your children sometimes, which is always nice. And there is a difficulty in balancing that, but it's been an amazing opportunity. And then actually one of these particularly wonderful and supportive brands has been quite integral in the next chapter of my life, which is forming a collective of women who span a digital marketing, branding, design, social kind of platform, and everyone has their expertise. And we work collectively on projects as we find that working with brands, they say, do you know someone who does social media marketing training? Or do you know someone who does? So we formed A Few Great Women, which is 5 founders and owners of the business. And we work advising small businesses on their e-com strategy, implementing digital marketing, and general advice, support, a shoulder to cry on if it's needed. And it's been actually the most amazing thing to have a team to soundboard from again, and have a kind of opportunity to share things. And we've all found that this crazy time that we're in has been a real roller coaster in terms of our professional lives, our personal lives. And at the beginning, there was a huge amount of uncertainty where people didn't really know how to communicate to their audiences, whether to, whether a commercial intention on your marketing was the wrong thing to do, and how to kind of navigate it. So we were all very much kind of in the same boat there, and it's been an amazing chance for us all to share that experience together. And luckily for us all, it's come round to the fact that most businesses have realized that the prevalence and the importance of your online store and your business online is absolutely integral. No more so than now. You've got your global store. The door is always open. You've got an amazing opportunity to reach a new audience. And It's been busy, to say the least. It's an exciting time for us all. And it's wonderful to be able to share all our sort of wealth of knowledge and experience with brands to kind of try and help them navigate through what's been happening at the moment. So that's where I find myself now. I work as an independent consultant for some brands and work collectively on projects with a few great women as well. We are building websites, we are advising on strategy, and we are implementing digital and content plans. So it's a good varied time, and we have an awful lot of experience collectively, which is great for brands because they can pull in to understand, from any sort of area where it is that they want help and advice. And I think at this certain time, your content strategy and your narrative is so much more important than it's ever been before. And something that I have seen in abundance, which I'm thrilled about, is these small brands that have their story and their narrative. They've seen business is increasingly good, and that people are supporting small businesses, small brands, and it's so beneficial for them to sort of be able to understand that story and to understand that kind of journey that these brands go on. Believe me, it is not easy. And the fact that brands can do it, and often with very small teams, very flexibly, it's such a credit to the people that run these businesses, and it's an amazing opportunity to grow. And no least, content marketing strategy is such a great way to do so. So I'm going to talk you through a bit of a plan on how to map your content. Now, what's been interesting is how brands increasingly, because we're living in such uncertain times, whereas before we would have marketing meetings in July and we'd plan our Q4 strategy for Christmas, and we'd know about gifting and the party edit and the dresses and, all the things that conventionally would be a thing, and we roll them out every year and amend them slightly. This year is a very, very different time, and brands are increasingly leaving their content strategy to smaller windows. So rather than thinking 3 months ahead, they might be thinking a month, 6 weeks ahead. And the reason for that is that things are constantly changing. And I think that the mistake that you would make is by creating an entire content strategy and our situation changes, and then everything has to change around it. So I think the kind of key takeaway that I'd say from this is that when you're planning your content, be wary of how flexible you need to be, and thinking about it not too far in advance, just in case things kind of do change, but just to kind of keep the current situation in mind when we're going through our kind of marketing plans, because we've got to relate in an efficient way. So obviously planning your content helps you save time, it's more efficient, and there are ways to which to do it that aren't too sort of overwhelming. I've got a document that has been uploaded onto the Domestika blog, and that will give you a bit of an idea of how to map your content, and we'll go through how it looks in a minute. And I find it really helpful to go through that kind of through the channels, and to understand how it's going to look on each platform, so that you're kind of all lined up. Now, with content, the most important thing is that you have a consistent message across all channels. So not a copy and paste situation, but that your marketing is planned out with one specific theme, potentially, and that you have effectively planned how you are going to plot that across each channel in the most appropriate way for that platform. So it's something that you need to be conscious of how much time you've got, and how much you can actually do. So to be really realistic about your deadlines. So if there's only a few channels that you want to focus on and you know that they do well for you, then it's good to just focus on those rather than trying to do every single channel and sort of trying to spread yourself too thinly. And I think the other thing is just to be really authentic with your content. So make sure that what you're saying, it kind of comes back to your core brand mission statement, and that everything that you are relating it back to is relevant for not only you, but your customer as well. And finally, I think things to think about with your content is that you need to just have an ability to flex your plans. So as I said, due to the current climate, or things change, you can have your plan in place, but it allows you to have slight flexibility about pushing things back potentially a week if it doesn't seem like the right kind of time to do it. So obviously you've got key dates in your content calendar that you'd want to potentially think about. And if you don't want to think about them for you to implement, be just wary of them being on the horizon. So lots of brands that I work with don't buy into Black Friday, for example. They don't align with the whole sort of Black Friday discounts and the mass kind of mania that ensues over that weekend. But I wouldn't do anything huge for your content strategy over that weekend if you know Black Friday is happening, because the noise that is being created online, it will be very difficult to cut through that. So again, that's something to just be conscious of: big holidays, big discounts, and just be aware that you've plotted those on your calendar and that you know exactly what's happening in the kind of wider global world that's beyond you and your brand. And just from a plotting perspective, it's really important to just be relevant to your current environment and to ensure that you've got a handle on what's happening outside too. The other thing to bear in mind is when you're creating all your content, that you want to format your images according to what the platform is. So formatting something for Insta stories versus your Insta posts, making sure that you've got your homepage graphics aligned in terms of how they work if they're a horizontal graphic or square, and formatting those accordingly. It's really important to ensure that your images are engaging and they're going to draw in your audience. Often you want to put a nice call to action on your images to sort of for the customer to understand immediately what you're trying to achieve. So is it shop now, or come and explore the collection, or view the lookbook, whatever it is, just make it really clear about how that's kind of presented. And then in terms of your social engagement, you use your Instagram channels to understand which images work well for you, which get better engagement than others, and that can really kind of dictate your content strategy too. So if you know that certain images just don't work and they don't get the kind of pull through from your social channels, then veer towards the one that's do and that are more kind of engaging for your audience. Another thing to bear in mind is when you're writing your content, you want to ensure that it's in line with your SEO strategy. So if you're writing copy for your homepage, does it include your brand, USP and the keywords that you want to sort of be known for as a brand, as well as kind of the creative copy that you're putting in for your stories? Same with your blog and your product stories. So think about those keywords and think about how you can use those across each platform too. It's really nice actually at that point to create a kind of copy bank. So you can have, somewhere hidden away in your massive Google Sheets, a few phrases that you want to kind of include consistently about your brand. Just gonna have some water, sorry. So you can have some really great sort of phrases or words even that you can keep coming back to, that are sort of on brand. And sometimes it's quite overwhelming to think, right, I've got to suddenly think about this creative and get my copy out there. So to have a few kind of fallback statements to go to is always really, really helpful, because you've gone through that process before and you've got them somewhere saved. So That's a really nice tip for copy. And I think finally, the points to remember, just to be really engaging with your copy, to be authentic to who you are and your brand. And don't forget user-generated content. So something that's really great is just to get feedback from who your customer is and what they're saying about you. And I think on a general point, that can be interjected into lots of different channels, on the footer of an email, for example, or some great customer comments on your Instagram. So it's really nice to have a kind of customer view on who you are and what you're doing and how you're doing it well as well. It's really important, and people really align with that. So I think it's something to bear in mind when you're creating your content. So there is some general tips on content planning. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen now, and I'm going to show you my content plan. So this is my basic mapping document, which I use for creation of content. I write everything in here, and depending on the brand that I'm working with, you can then just obviously just remove lines which aren't relevant, or it's not something that they've considered. So the key thing to bear in mind here is that you've got all the areas in which your content is being viewed. And if you are doing a marketing campaign, it allows you to have that visibility from a platform perspective in one view. It's very easy, I find, to go really in detail on every level, and then you haven't got that kind of one holistic view over anything you're planning to do. So it might be, for instance, that you have a sustainability focus for the month of October, and you're talking about your brand and how the sustainability of practices and products. So if that's your overriding theme, you can then start to plot how that would look across all your channels. As I mentioned before, key dates is super important, even if you're not going to be paying any attention to them. Knowing that it's Black Friday weekend and understanding how that's going to look in terms of the competitive horizon is a really important thing. Seasonal launches, any new product, new arrivals will obviously be something that you'd want to include in here, so that then you can sort of plot out anywhere that you'd want to be referring to that. And then website content. So this is another really important thing. The reason it's so important is because it also enables you to map back your success. So say you've got a specific product that's on the homepage, you might want to put a product view in here. So you've got your products in here, obviously in white. And you might want to get an understanding of how that relates back to the sales. In my experience, any product on the homepage instantly generates revenue for those items, because it's the first thing a customer sees. They tend to go straight onto the homepage, scroll down to the bottom, scroll back up again. As they're scrolling back up, they see a product they like. It's a sort of no-brainer. But if you have this in here as your content plan from products that you want to showcase, be it best-selling products, be it slow-selling products even, be it products that you've got loads of stock over the Christmas period, for example, it's really good to plot these. And then it's good to look back at them and say, right, what were we actually showcasing for this month? I do a weekly view. It's really important for you to understand, if you have thousands of visitors a day, you might want to change your homepage every week. If your web visitors are slightly less, you might find that once a month is sufficient for you in terms of looking at refreshing the content. Your analytics will advise you on when the next time people return to your site, and whether it's between 0 and 7 days or 7 and 14. So looking at that can also guide you in terms of plotting your overall homepage updates. Social content, just again to plot what you're working on. And anything that you're working with either influencers or you've got on the blog, again, it all really maps back to where you need to sort of, as you can record it and analyze it. You can, factor in your CRM program. So if you launch a welcome program with a welcome offer in here, you put in launched welcome plan with 10% off. And that's a really great opportunity for you, again, to look back on it, as well as, plotting it in to understand how it's been working for you. So that's the content map. I hope that sort of makes sense in terms of how it would be plotted. I tended to do it, as I said, in quarters, but you might find that once a month is good for you to look at what's been working and how to kind of move it forward. There is also a social content plan in there, which is a similar document, and it just, again, it outlines all the areas that you'd want to be talking about with your social where relevant, and looking at the kind of key content messages that you have across there. So that's all in the blog for you to download at your leisure and to use if you would find it useful. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little insight into content planning for a brand. The brand that I am going to show you is one of the brands that I've been working with for a number of years and is very close to my heart. Lily & Lionel is a women's wear brand, started with scarves in about 10 years ago and has gone into ready to wear and does really beautiful prints that are designed in London, and it's got a real sort of uniqueness about it. So I'm going to be showing you how we could plot a content strategy for Lily & Lionel to give you kind of an understanding how we can put all our kind of practice into one overall plan. So I'll present this, but it may be that I need to come out to show you something. So this is the brand. It's really important to understand who you are and also who your customer is. Always keep in mind your customer. It's so important. Any content marketing strategy you've got in your head, think about how your customer is going to use this. So in this instance, it's gifting, it's Christmas. However, this customer is female, self-purchaser, in most likely, stylish, knows what she likes, probably is not that willing to, well, I mean, she would, if she was going to buy something for Christmas, she would have probably hinted what she wanted. And therefore, it got me thinking about how would a Christmas marketing strategy run for a brand like this? So I've created a content plan called Whisper Your Wish List. And the premise of this is that you are sending someone a little nudge to say, you know what, this is the dress that I've got of my dreams, and I really would like you to buy it for me. So the objective of this content plan is to get customers on the website browsing. So to understand, right, well, if we're going to do a wish list plan, what is on my wish list? And so it may, draw that customer back in to have a little look round to understand what the range is like and to start dreaming of your wish list. It's relatable to the customer because of the demographic of the customer. And because she may have to give that person in her life a nudge in terms of the present, the gift purchasing. Lily & Lionel is a brand where, you are investing in your pieces. It's, it's a higher price point piece. And as a result, it's a lifetime piece. It's not just a throwaway piece, and it's something that we'd have as an investment for life. And so that's something that the brand really want to kind of keep as part of their mission statement, and something that they find is really important to kind of get across to the customer. So again, from a marketing perspective, that's something that really resonates with this campaign to ensure that the two kind of points marry, that this is a piece that you will have for your forever, and that is, that you'll treasure. So this is the campaign. And what I wanted to do is ensure that when you're planning your content, you understand these kind of main areas that you want to sort of get across. So your messaging. How are you going to convey your messaging? What are you going to, how are you going to kind of put it to the customer? Which platforms are you going to use to launch the campaign? What's your sort of phrases and titles for it? And which products are you going to showcase? So if you map that all out at the beginning, it's a really good sort of start. So I've identified my key messaging. Whisper your wish list, a little hint in someone's ear to share your Christmas gift list and get that piece you want. I've chosen my platforms. So I'm going to go with website, social, Pinterest, journal, affiliates, and email. As I said, really choose your platforms according to what you have got available to you, but also within your remit. Don't say, I'm going to do every single platform it's possible to do, and then get yourself in a right old sort of state because you've done too much and you spread yourself too thinly, and then the execution of the campaign isn't as slick as you'd want it to be. Also, look at the channels that work best for you. So if your traffic is generated through 6 main channels, use those as your opportunity to really shine. And ensure that you've got those ones nailed. Don't waste time on channels that don't perform from a traffic or revenue basis. And the beauty, as I always say with online, you have got all this data at your fingertips. It's an amazingly intuitive and insightful opportunity to gauge the success of a campaign. And so there's no excuse. So the titles and phrases, I'm looking at timeless gifts, investment pieces to really drive home that this is not something that's just a sort of, throwaway gift. This is something that you want to treasure forever. And that goes with, this little whisper and nudge. And in terms of products, how are we going to kind of showcase that? Well, we know what's already been selling well, and therefore we're going to put those at the forefront of this campaign in order to draw people in, knowing what we do about a best-selling print. Now, as a print house, they have great prints, and they know already from a very early stage in the year, in the season, what prints work best for them. So really use that to your advantage. If you know that people really love a particular style or a particular dress or a particular product, use it. So using your content plan to plot your campaign. Look at where your website is, how you can give the maximum showcase it against your website the most efficiently and effectively. Take over your lead banner for the time that you're going to be working with it, and make sure it's engaging as possible. And plot that out in your content plan as well. Understand where it's going to sit and how it's going to sit amongst all the other products that you'll be on and stories you're going to be showcasing. Another great thing to do with your content plan is if you've got a really great campaign, you want to create a landing page, which means bringing people onto the site and giving them a bit more info about what it is that you're talking about and where it's come from. Often with brands, they lead all this amazing kind of info in, and then it just goes to a product page or a category page, and it hasn't got that narrative. You've lost them. You've got to make sure that you've got all that great kind of content and that you're guiding them in and you're explaining it. So it's really, really important to incorporate that within your overall strategy. The website platforms that people use now are incredibly user-friendly, and so you can create a landing page through websites, or you can also do it through things like MailChimp. You can create a landing page on there if you're going to be driving traffic to that. But again, it's just use that as an opportunity to tell your story rather than taking them straight in and just heading them to products. Ad creative. So these are some lovely gifts that we've got running for new season, but think about how you can create some really engaging creative for your ads, and try and kind of think about that messaging that goes across that too. Same for organic social, but just ensure that you've got everything that you want to convey through your ads in this way. GIFs work really well, videos work really well, user-generated content works really well. So think about that too. So for my content strategy, I'm also going to incorporate the journal. I'm going to write some copy on the website. I'm going to ask some 3 Lily and Lionel customers and 3 influencers to talk about what's on their wish list. So it's really engaging, you know, on both sides. It's that brand sort of feeding out, but it's also people feeding back in. So this is a great way of encouraging people to share, you know, look, I'm on the blog and you've got to see me. And it's also a great way of kind of getting your reach out there. So from an SEO perspective, obviously it's great to have new content on the site. It's also great to have links going out and links coming in. So from that perspective, this is a really great way of doing that. It makes sure that you are sort of spreading yourself slightly wider, and you've got an amazing opportunity to sort of tell stories and explain the brand. So I'm going to have my influencers and my customers on this page, and I'm going to link through to products that are on their wish list, and I'm going to ask them to answer some questions about themselves and the brand. And it's just really like nice content for you to link through. So within the kind of main umbrella of the brand, you can have these little kind of offshoots. So you can have an email campaign saying, come and read what our customers are saying about what's on their wish list. So it's nice to kind of tie in these little sub-stories within your kind of overarching theme. And it's really important to kind of diversify from the main kind of overall sort of message, and find ways to kind of translate that on a platform specific basis into something like this, so that you've got different messages and that your content isn't just consistently the same. Organic social, obviously you've got a lot more to plot if you were doing this as a monthly thing. So I've decided to do the showcase the interviews for the customers on stories, which is really engaging because you can flick through and answer questions and make it really fun. I'm going to do a competition on social for this month while I'm running this with this competition, and I'm going to give a customer an opportunity to win their wish list alongside our campaign. So again, this is a really great opportunity for the customer to really engage, to kind of share their wish list, and to enable them to really kind of get on the site and start sort of shopping. So it's a great chance for all of that to sort of build up a bit of engagement and get people excited. One thing I would check when you're doing things like this. So winning your wish list means that you have to share it with the brand, for example. So just check as a sort of potential entrant, you go through all of the stages that you're asking your customers to do in order to make sure that it definitely works. Make sure you have your T's and C's all kind of up within the emails and within your Instagram, to make sure that you're sort of clear about winning and selection, etc. And yeah, test always. I've learned the hard way on that one. So another thing to do would be focusing on your key gifting as well. If you have products, as we said, that we really know fly, make it a real point to kind of showcase those within this kind of wish list theme, and to sort of engage the customers too. So winning a wish list on a competition, that's another way of kind of engaging the customer. And then again, I'm going to create a few emails around the campaign, and I'm going to introduce it, and then I'm going to follow that up with a succession of gift-focused emails with this win your wish list message as well, and the sharing with your loved ones. So again, you've got the opportunity to do gift-focused messages, but in the context of your campaign overall. Some points to remember: be engaging. Make sure that you're excited by it, and your customers will be too. Be authentic. So ensure that your message is true to who you are and your brand. And think about your keywords. It's an amazing opportunity to build up some kind of really great content. So think about how your keywords and your general SEO strategy can loop into your content strategy overall. And I can share some tips on some tools to use to do that. So that's the end of the presentation. I think we might have some time for some questions if anyone had any to ask. So the first question How do you achieve the balance between getting people to know your brand and not being annoyed with your ads? It's a very good question. And I think that's all really down to how you schedule your ads and looking at your frequency of how many times people have seen them. So if you were doing it within Facebook, for example, you can keep an eye on your frequency and look at how that is increasing. And if it goes above 2.5, 3, you know that people are starting to see your ads a little bit too much time, and you would switch your ads to a new audience, or you would potentially redirect where you're spending your ads if it's not generating revenue through those channels, that you would divert it to potentially another audience that you could select. But it's a difficult one to kind of get a balance, because obviously depending on the brand, those super aggressive ones that follow you around everywhere, it's a bit of a tie. But the ways in which you can analyze and monitor it to understand how, if they're losing their effectiveness, it's a really good chance to kind of move that away from them and to kind of focus on a new audience. So what do you think are specific examples of content marketing done good? There's a brand that I really love, and their content marketing is consistently slick, and their tone of voice is great, and they are just really kind of doing a good job, and they continue to perform so well across the board. It's called Allbirds. I'm sure you guys all know it. And the thing I love about these guys is they have really engaging content. Their tone of voice is a bridge between being quite informal but really informative. They use a great amount of graphics on their site and within their content overall, which kind of breaks up too much written content with engaging imagery. I mean, I'm showing you their website, but it's a consistency across all channels. And I love what they do in terms of their videos. They have a very, very, very simple concept and product. It's a single item, and yet they manage to create the narrative around it in a really, really effective way. And they think about all the touch points for your brand. They understand who their customer is, and they market that accordingly. And I think that they do a really great job of it. And you will see how they also do that in their ads. A really great tip, actually, if you're not already aware of that, you can always look at how other brands, what ads they're running, and you can see how the ads look on any brand on Facebook that are running ads. So this is Lily and Lionel, which is the example that I've just been using for the content strategy. But if you go onto any brand page and you scroll down, you've got a little tiny bit here, page transparency, and you can see their ad library. So for any brand that you'd want to check out, be it competitor, to understand what they're doing, or any brand really, it's a great insight and it's a great tool to understand that, so that you can see what's going on and give you a bit of inspiration creatively and content-wise to understand how to market your own brand. So that's a really good tip. How many times a month do you recommend to publish a paid campaign on social media? That's a tricky one, because the paid campaigns that I run on social media run consistently. I don't know whether this question is in relation to boosting a post potentially, but what I would recommend with Facebook ads in particular is to run them consistently. To run them, because what you're doing is you're gaining an amazing insight into the audiences that you are targeting, and it's given you then the ability to focus your efforts onto good performing sites or ads, or ads that aren't performing so well. So the main thing with Facebook ads in particular is just to continue to test your creative, your wording, your audiences. So you're running your ads constantly, but what you're doing is you're tweaking things as you go. So you're making little incremental changes, and you're then going to be seeing how those perform. So in answer to the question, it would be that you would run them consistently and constantly, but it may well be that you're just changing the parameters and you're changing who you're targeting along the way. How often do you send the newsletter? So again, it really, really depends on your audience and how engaged they are. It also depends on your times and what your, how you are set up to kind of create your content and what performs well for you. So if you find that your emails perform really, really well, and that you can consistently create engaging content, which will ensure that that continues to happen, then it's a good idea to send out a weekly email newsletter, and do that with, and continue to test how the audience is receiving that newsletter. If they generate a high engagement rate and they continue to do so, then continue to send on that sort of basis. For brands that I work with, we tend to do one commercially focused email a week, and we tend to do one that's more of a newsletter. So it might be a focus on a particular product, or a seasonal launch, or it might be something completely to do with the world of, books that we're reading, recipes that we're making. It might have something that's an observation from a completely different angle to product. And we find that Sunday nights are a really great time to send that, when people are generally kind of curled up and just want to read something engaging. So the idea behind those is just to kind of get your brand back into their sort of mindset. And then we often see a surge of sales on a Monday morning, whereby they might think, oh, I must get that tomorrow when I'm back in the office and I'm, back on my computer. So in answer to your question, it really does depend on your audiences and how engaged they are. But if you find that you get a really good, reaction to your email newsletters, a weekly one is a really good kind of balance on that one. So how far ahead should I make my content calendar, and how do I pick what type of content to prioritize? As I said earlier in the live, I have found with brands recently that the climate is changing. We're in uncertain times. We are in, a time of our lives where we don't really know what's happening from day to day. And so historically, brands were really kind of focused on creating Q4 strategy and way back in Q2 and making sure that it's all nailed and polished and everything's sorted. But I think that we have to be flexible about how we approach our strategy and how we approach our planning at the moment. And my brands that I've been working with are sort of working in a month in advance at the moment, trying to understand what next month looks like, and making sure that you do that with a flexible mindset, that things can still change. And I think that that's still particularly relevant now because, everything's up for question, right? So we just don't really know. And you wouldn't want to spend a long time creating a content strategy on, if we'd done it in July for party dresses and created an entire shoot around that, only to find that no one's going out anywhere to party. So the whole content has to be canned. So just be mindful of that in the moment. In normal times, you would be able to plan, up to a quarter in advance to kind of really get that content. But I think you've also just got to be a bit more creative with your content now and sort of pull into resources, be a bit more kind of ad hoc. Maybe, the engaging content that people are creating now resonates with people a lot more. Gone are the days where you have to have a super slick image of, brand campaigns, and actually people want to see real people. They want to see how customers like your products, how they react to it. And actually that will inevitably convert better than, something that's polished and unreal. So bear that in mind when you're creating your content calendar. And how do I pick what content to prioritize? So that is really dependent on what you are what you're seeing coming through from your site. So if you can look at your traffic, I would look for last year, but I would also look for the last month. Say, we've had a lot of stuff coming through Pinterest. Focus on Pinterest. Look at how that is going to sort of generate more traffic if it's performing well for you. So use your analytics and your tools, because it's a real great insight into what performs well for you as a brand. So always come back to that as your kind of first kind of starting point, and then that will educate you in where you prioritize your time. Don't spend lots of time on things that doesn't generate either traffic or revenue, because it's just not worth it. So we've got time for one more question, I think, and then we have to say goodbye, which is a shame. It's been great. Do you have specific dates where you have to create engagement besides Black Friday and Christmas? Again, this is so dependent on your brand. You know, we talk about Mother's Day, we talk about lots of different areas, but if it's not relevant to your brand, if your customer is not going to be a mother, don't do a Mother's Day campaign. You've really got to tailor it. Think always about who you're targeting, why you're targeting them, your objective of your creative campaign, and then work backwards from there. So there's not a one size fits all for anything. It has to be relevant to that customer and who you have in mind, because I think there is a bit of a backlash about commercial holidays for commercial intent that may not resonate with your customer and could end up actually doing the opposite and thinking, well, why are they doing that? Because it doesn't mean anything to me and they just want to make a quick buck. So you've really got to think about that when you're creating your content strategy and making sure that you are relevant and engaging to that specific target audience. And that's it. Thank you. Oh, I think we're having one more. How often and how much do you invest in new image and videos for campaign content? Again, it really depends on your budget, and it depends on how you are able to, how much you're able to invest from a brand perspective. Again, during this current climate, we've seen brands be super creative with what they can achieve on a small budget and how they can do that. And I think it really does depend. So I think seasonally is a good, to get your seasonal collection if you're apparel. But it really is kind of quite specific to how your brand, you're going to market your marketing strategy. But I think that you can do one overarching big campaign, and then you can create little things that are alongside those as well that can just interject within that bigger kind of picture. So yeah, it's sort of dependent on your budget really, and you can make content is such an important part of how you can market something, and the more content you have, the better. So it's a question of whether you can afford to do it and create more, or whether you have to just allocate it to a kind of biannual kind of event where you can just kind of afford to do it in a way. But just be creative with what you've got and create things that, that resonate with your customer, and don't necessarily have to be the high-end glossy kind of shoots. You can do other things that will also kind of engage their interest. Great. I hope that helps. And it's been really great to speak to everyone, and I hope that there's been some interesting insights. So thank you so much for listening. We'll see you soon.
La idea es como algo muy frágil.
Se me fue la hebra.
I'm going to show you some examples. This is what we've got behind me.
¿Qué más preguntas tengo por aquí? ¿Cómo descubriste que lo tuyo era